Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I want to talk about something that has been on my mind for a while, and I know a lot of romance readers in the book space have been discussing it over the past couple of years, and I'm very late to the party, and there's people that have been talking about it nonstop. But I want to talk about the changing landscape of the romance genre and why seasoned romance readers might feel like romance kind of sucks right now. As someone who has spent over a decade reading romance, starting back in middle school when I would steal Avon books from the top of my mom's closet and read them, to really diving into the romance genre over the past 5 years, I have seen so many changes in the genre firsthand, but lately there's a lot of buzz in the community about the shift in how romance is being written and marketed, talked about, and the shift has a lot to do with how platforms like TikTok have shaped the genre. And let's get into it. What exactly is happening to romance right now, and how do we go from these grand sweeping romances to fast-paced, seemingly shock-driven, trope-filled novels? For starters, TikTok, or Book Talk as it's called. I'm not on it, but if you are anywhere on the internet, you know about TikTok, and if you're anywhere in the book internet space, you are familiar with Book Talk. It's become a massive force in the publishing industry and romance in particular. It's no secret that Book Talk has kind of changed the way that people view reading. It's made reading trendy, it's made reading cool, and a lot of people who either never read when they were a child or read when they were a child and fell out of love with it have found the genre again, and they have made their way to romance. With the change in audience and change in consumption of media, there are some consequences. Where once we felt like there was a focus on slow burn relationships and nuanced character development and emotional depth, TikTok has incentivized authors through no fault of their own to write stories that grab attention immediately, that the viewer gets hooked on within seconds, or else they continue scrolling, and that mentally has started bleeding into romance novels. Authors now know that if they want to catch readers' attention on social media, their stories have to be wild, whether it's through the most extreme scenes or by playing on the most shocking tropes. And I can't really blame them. Social media for a lot of indie authors is a large part of their marketing strategy. A lot of authors who had been writing indie romance for years suddenly get picked up by publishers because they get pushed on Book Talk. So in no way am I saying that this is the author's fault. It's a collective fault. Let's talk about the spicy factor. A few years ago, romance novels used to have steamy moments where you'd have a couple of sex scenes, you'd have chapters and chapters and chapters of build-up to the couple getting together and finally consummating their feelings. But now it feels like the entire book hinges on one or two crazy over-the-top sex scenes, and there's been an undeniable shift towards books that are meant to shock you, get you talking, or leave you blushing. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against spice. I have several videos on my channel about the darker side of romance that has some darker themes specifically around sex. I have read some of the most wild romance spice scenes that are out there. But there's a difference between a well-paced romance with a few hot moments and sex that changes the relationship or furthers the relationship or has an impact, and a novel where the spicy scenes are the point of the book. It's almost as though some novels are more focused on creating viral moments that authors can quote in their TikToks and people can use in their descriptions than telling a deep and meaningful love story. Now, there has been the erotica genre for ever, right? That's nothing new. Intense spice has been around forever. Our parents were reading it, and it's not new. It's certainly not new to us long-term romance readers. We're not shocked by the fact that these books exist. The difference is if you were searching out a story that was all sex and that was what you wanted out of your story, you would reach for erotica novels. If you wanted something that focused on the building of the relationship and the sex was only part of it, you reached for romance. And this leads to another shift, which is the focus on tropes. We have all read The Enemies to Lovers, The Second Chance, The Grumpy Sunshine, but recently I have noticed a massive shift to tropes becoming the dominant part of the narrative and not just a framework for the story, almost like the entire plot is the trope. For example, dark romance. The line between dark romance and regular romance has become increasingly blurry. The dark elements, like taboo relationships, power imbalances, or morally gray characters, used to be something that was explored in depth within the context of a story, but now dark romance has become its own subgenre, as it should be, but has bled into mainstream romance. It's no longer an exploration of complex themes. It's about hitting the most shocking beats to draw in the readers. And it does a fantastic job of drawing people in. We have more people reading the dark romance subgenre than we ever have. Some of the most popular book talk books are those very dark, shocking romances. So it's doing its job. But what is the cost? Where there was once nuanced character development, we now see an almost formulaic approach to storytelling, where it's less about the emotional journey between the characters and more about how quickly you can escalate the tension or bring in the spice, how often you can introduce spicy scenes, and that's all just an effort seemingly to keep the buzz on social media. The problem is, this shift risks overshadowing the heart of romance, the emotional connection, the growth of the characters, the relationship itself. When the spice and the shock value and the tropes are all the focal point, the very thing that makes romance such a powerful genre, the exploration of love and trust and vulnerability, often takes a back seat. That doesn't mean that all TikTok romances are bad, of course. There are plenty of authors who are creating beautiful, nuanced, and heartfelt stories, but there's no denying that the landscape is changing and has changed. And that has implications not just for readers, but for the way that books are written and marketed. So, what does that mean for the future of romance? Are we losing the things that make romance special, or is it just an evolution, a shift in the genre to match the times, to match the new readers? As a reader who has lived through the highs and lows of romance, I think there's room for both. There's a place for the fast-paced, shocking, viral romance novels that tap into instant gratification, but there's also a place for stories that linger a little longer, that make you feel something more than just the heat of the sex and the spice and the moment. Romance is about connection. And while TikTok and the change and romance and marketing may be driving some new trends, I don't think that the core of romance will ever change. Speaking from personal experience, really dived into contemporary romance when I first started reading the genre really heavy, and I was the person picking up all of those shocking novels. Now, this was before TikTok, and this was before the shock value really became a marketing strategy, but I would seek out those really intense kind of shocking novels, things that I had never read before, because there's this world to explore, and it got me excited and I wanted to talk about it. I'm not saying there's necessarily anything wrong with that. I was one of those people. And I think every reader can remember back to when they read their first couple of romance novels and how that impacted them and how it made them feel. The difference is we are just seeing the people who are just getting into romance have that arc. I'm now at a place where I want the slow burn. I want the deep emotional connection. I want working through trauma. I want all of the things that make a relationship real. But that's not necessarily to say that's what I've always wanted or what I always want. That's why I say there's room for both. And I do think there's something to be said about the algorithm of things like TikTok. You pay attention to one thing and the algorithm feeds that to you over and over again. It's kind of like the conversation that was being had in 2020 when readers were urging other readers to diversify their reading, and the excuse was, well, the only thing that I ever see is white authors. I only ever see the same books over and over again. That's sort of the same thing here. If you're only interacting with people that read the same books, that read the same type of books, then that's all you're ever going to see. So I think it's important to take a little bit of accountability yourself, and also recognizing that with this new batch of readers, there's going to become growing pains, and there's nothing wrong with catering to that audience, especially when some of the biggest creators, the people that are having the most impact, are reading these novels. And I don't, again, blame the author solely, and I don't blame the reader solely. I think it's a mutual thing, and it's something that we can all work towards, and we all have a place in the romance community. And I think that's a long-standing lesson that the romance community tries to impart, and this is just part of it. But I would love to hear your thoughts as romance readers. How do you feel about the shift? Do you enjoy the spicy, like, viral romances? Or do you miss the slower, more emotional storytelling? In the comments, I would love to talk. Consider subscribing if you want more content like this. This is more out of my range of topics, but I just wanted to sit down and talk about it because I've been ruminating on it. But if you want to see more content from me, go ahead and check out my backlist. Consider subscribing. All my social medias are linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys in my next one.